The massive chamber of the Interstellar Peace Council stretched upward for hundreds of feet. Light filtered through crystal walls, casting rainbow patterns across the assembled delegates. Representatives from 43 different species sat in their designated sections, each area modified to suit their particular biology. The air processors worked overtime to maintain the complex mixture of atmospheres required for such a diverse gathering. Commander Taewon Kim stood at attention behind the human delegation's Chi section. His dress uniform was crisp and professional, decorated with ribbons that meant nothing to the aliens around him. He kept his face neutral, his hands clasped behind his back while his eyes constantly scanned the room. Old habits died hard even in a diplomatic setting. Ambassador Ji-Hai Park sat in front of him, her tablet glowing with translation software. She had spent 3 months preparing for this summit, humanity's first major appearance since joining the Galactic Coalition. The pressure showed in the tight set of her shoulders, though her voice remained steady as she spoke with the delegates seated nearby. Across the chamber, War Chief Vorthak of the Krell Empire dominated his section. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, his body covered in thick plates of natural armor that gleamed like polished stone. 4 arms crossed over his massive chest, each one capable of crushing steel. His head resembled a hammer with small eyes that burned with intelligence and pride. Scars crisscross his armor, each one representing a battle won, a world conquered. The Krell had built their empire through military might. They respected strength above all else, and they made no secret of their disdain for species they considered weak. Their section of the chamber was decorated with weapons and battle standards from 17 different star systems. Counselor Thren called the session to order. The avian diplomat's feathers shifted through colors as she spoke, indicating her emotional state to those who understood the signals. Today they would discuss territorial boundaries and military protocols for newly admitted species. It was dry work, full of legal language and careful diplomacy. Taewon had sat through worse briefings during his years as a SEAL. He maintained his focus, listening carefully even though his translator earpiece turned everything into a slight delay. He noticed when Vorthak began to shift in his seat, the movement subtle but telling. The Krell warrior had been growing restless throughout the morning session. Now, as Ambassador Park began to present Earth's proposals for military cooperation, Vorthak's irritation became obvious. "I must speak," Vorthak announced, his voice like grinding rocks. The translator made his words sound even harsher. This council wastes time listening to soft-worlders. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates looked uncomfortable. Others seemed curious to see how the humans would respond. Ambassador Park kept her composure. "War Chief Vorthak, Earth has followed all proper protocols for this presentation. If you have concerns, please raise them through appropriate channels." Vorthak laughed, a sound that made the crystal walls vibrate. "Protocols, channels. This is the language of the weak." He stood, and even the largest species in the room seemed small by comparison. Humans play at being a military power, but what have they fought? Only themselves. Your greatest wars were against your own kind. This is not the mark of warriors. This is the mark of children squabbling in the mud. Taewon felt his jaw tighten, but he did not move. He had been in hostile situations before. Training took over, keeping his body language neutral, his breathing steady. "The Krell Empire has conquered 17 star systems," Vorthak continued, warming to his subject. "We have defeated species far older and stronger than humanity. Yet this council grants humans equal voice in military matters. It is absurd." Ambassador Park began to respond, but Vorthak cut her off with a gesture. "I do not address you, diplomat. Words are your weapons, and they are as empty as vacuum." His small eyes fixed on Taewon. "I address the one who stands behind you, the one who wears the uniform of a warrior." All attention shifted to Taewon. He met Vorthak's gaze without flinching, his expression unchanged. "What is your name, human?" Vorthak demanded. "Commander Taewon Kim, United States Navy." "And what battles have you fought, Commander Kim?" Taewon considered his response carefully. "I have served in multiple theaters of operation. The details are classified." This brought another laugh from Vorthak. "Classified. Another word for shame. You hide your battles because they were not worth remembering." He looked around the chamber, addressing the other delegates now. "This is what humanity offers the Coalition. Secret wars. Hidden conflicts. They fight in the shadows because they lack the strength to fight in the light." Several delegates murmured among themselves. The Krell had many allies, species who shared their philosophy of might making right. Even neutral parties seemed swayed by Vorthak's words. "I propose a demonstration," Vorthak declared. "Let this human warrior face me in the training arena. Non-lethal combat witnessed by all. If he can defeat me, then perhaps humans deserve their place at this table. But when he fails, as he surely will, then humanity must accept its proper place among the soft species who hide behind words and treaties." The chamber erupted in discussion. Counselor Thren's feathers flashed red, indicating distress. "This is highly irregular. The Council does not settle diplomatic matters through combat." "Then perhaps the Council has grown soft as well," Vorthak said.
"I claim the right of challenge under coalition law."
"The human may refuse, but his refusal will speak louder than any words his diplomat can offer." Ambassador Park turned to look at Tae-Wan, concern clear in her eyes. They both knew the trap that had been laid. If Tae-Wan refused, humanity would look weak before the entire galactic community. Every species would question whether Earth could defend itself, whether it deserved a voice in military matters. But accepting meant facing an opponent who outmatched him in every physical category. The Krell were stronger, faster, more durable than humans. Vorthak had decades of combat experience against multiple species. It was not a fair fight. Tae-Wan stepped forward. "I accept the challenge." The chamber filled with noise. Some delegates seemed shocked. Others appeared pleased, perhaps eager to see the upstart humans put in their place. Ambassador Park stood, her voice tight. "Commander Kim, you do not have to do this." "Yes, ma'am, I do," Tae-Wan said quietly. "He made it about more than just me. It's about Earth now." Vorthak smiled, showing teeth designed for tearing metal. "Excellent. 3 days from now in the central arena, the galaxy will watch as humans learn their first important lesson. In space, the strong survive and the weak serve." Tae-Wan did not respond. He simply nodded once, accepting the terms. His mind was already working, processing everything he had observed about the Krell warrior. 3 days was not much time, but SEALs were trained to make the most of whatever time they had. Counselor Thren reluctantly agreed to sanction the exhibition match. The session was adjourned in chaos, with delegates arguing among themselves about what they had witnessed. As the chamber emptied, Tae-Wan remained at attention, his eyes following Vorthak's departure. The Krell warrior moved with confidence, already certain of his victory. Tae-Wan allowed himself a thin smile. Confidence could be a weakness, especially when it blinded you to what your opponent was capable of. The Krell had no idea what a Navy SEAL really meant. They were about to learn. The human quarters on Concordia Prime were modest compared to the elaborate spaces provided for older Council species. Tae-Wan did not mind. He had slept in worse places, under worse conditions, waiting for missions that would test him far more than comfortable beds. He sat on the floor of his small room, watching footage of Krell combat techniques on his tablet. The video showed Vorthak in previous matches, exhibitions held on Krell worlds to celebrate military victories. The war chief moved with brutal efficiency, using his 4 arms to create attack patterns that would overwhelm most opponents. His natural armor shrugged off blows that would cripple other species. Still studying? Lieutenant Hyunwoo Lee stood in the doorway carrying 2 bottles of water. He tossed one to Tae-Wan, who caught it without looking away from the screen. "There has to be something," Tae-Wan said. "Some weakness, some pattern I can exploit." Hyunwoo sat down beside him, watching the footage. On screen, Vorthak grabbed an opponent with 2 arms while striking with the other 2. The fight lasted less than a minute. "He's faster than you, stronger, has better reach. Natural armor, more limbs." Hyunwoo paused. "This is insane, you know that, right?" "Yeah," Tae-Wan agreed. "I know. You could still back out. Claim diplomatic immunity or something. And then what? Every species in the galaxy thinks humans are weak, that we cannot back up our words with action." Tae-Wan finally looked at his friend. "This is bigger than me getting my ass kicked in an arena. It's going to be more than getting your ass kicked. The medical team estimates you will need at least 2 weeks in regeneration therapy. That's if you are lucky." Tae-Wan smiled without humor. "Then I better not rely on luck." A knock at the door interrupted them. Ambassador Park entered, followed by a woman Tae-Wan had not met before. She was young, perhaps 30, with sharp eyes behind thin glasses. "Commander Kim, this is Dr. Yuna Choi. She's a xenobiologist who has been studying Krell physiology." Yuna bowed slightly, a gesture Taewon returned. She wasted no time with pleasantries, pulling up holographic displays from her own tablet. I have been analyzing everything we know about Krell biology. The news is not encouraging. Tell me something I don't know, Taewon said. Yuna manipulated the hologram showing a detailed Krell anatomy scan. Their skeletal structure is silicon-based, much denser than human bone. Muscle fiber is arranged in triple-layer configurations, providing enormous strength. Their nervous system processes information approximately 40% faster than human reflexes. So he thinks faster, moves faster, and hits harder. Correct. Additionally, their armor plating is not actually bone. It's a crystalline structure that grows throughout their lifetime. Vorthak is over 60 standard years old. His armor is nearly unbreakable by human standards. Hyunwoo whistled low. Is there any good news? Yuna hesitated. There are some theoretical weaknesses. Krell biology requires enormous caloric intake to maintain their muscle mass and armor growth. They tire more quickly than humans during extended physical activity. Their joints, while protected, have limited rotation compared to human joints, and their sensory organs, particularly their eyes, are not well adapted to rapid light changes. Taewon leaned forward, interested now. How quickly do they tire? In burst combat, which is their preferred style, they are nearly unstoppable. But if forced into prolonged engagement, Yuna manipulated the hologram again, showing metabolic projections. Their efficiency drops significantly after approximately 15 minutes of sustained activity. 15 minutes is a long time in a fight, Hyunwoo observed. It's long enough, Taewon said quietly. His mind was working through possibilities, building strategies from the scraps of advantage he had. Ambassador Park had been silent, but now she spoke. I received communication from Earth today. The Secretary of Defense suggests you withdraw from the challenge. They believe the diplomatic damage from withdrawal would be less than the damage from a public defeat. With respect, ma'am, I disagree. So do I, Park admitted, but I had to convey the message. She looked at Taewon with something like sympathy. You understand what you're walking into? Yes, ma'am. I've walked into worse. That was not entirely true, but it sounded confident. Taewon had survived situations that should have killed him. He had been shot, frozen, nearly drowned, and pushed beyond what human bodies were supposed to endure. But those experiences had all been against human enemies or natural obstacles. This was different. This was facing an opponent who was simply better in almost every measurable way. After the others left, Taewon returned to his studies. He watched footage until his eyes burned. He memorized every movement pattern, every tell that preceded Vorthak's attacks. The Krell warrior was skilled, no question. But skill came with habits, and habits could be exploited. The next day, Taewon spent time in the station's gym. The equipment was designed for multiple species, adjustable to different gravitational preferences and body types. He set it for Earth standard and ran through his routines. Not building strength, there was no time for that. Instead, he focused on endurance, on keeping his body moving long after it wanted to stop. A small crowd gathered to watch. Word had spread quickly about the challenge. Some aliens whispered among themselves, curious about the human who would fight Vorthak. Others looked at him with pity. Taewon ignored them all. He ran. He did pull-ups until his arms shook. He practiced movements that would seem pointless to observers, but were building the muscle memory he would need. Every motion had purpose, even if that purpose was not obvious. On the second day, news networks across the galaxy began broadcasting speculation about the match. The humans were new, unknown. Vorthak was famous. Betting markets heavily favored the Krell warrior, with odds reaching 100-1 against the human. Taewon learned this from Hyunwoo, who seemed personally offended by the numbers. 100-1. It's insulting. It's realistic, Taewon corrected. Based on what they know, those are fair odds. And what do they not know? Taewon smiled. They don't know what it means to be a SEAL. That night, alone in his quarters, Taewon let himself remember his training. The cold water of the Pacific Ocean, so freezing it felt like knives against his skin. The instructors who pushed them beyond exhaustion, beyond pain, searching for the point where they would quit. Most candidates did quit. The statistics were brutal. But those who remained learned something valuable. They learned that the body could continue long after the mind wanted to stop. They learned that pain was just information, not a command. They learned that the only easy day was yesterday, and tomorrow would test them again. Vorthak had conquered 17 star systems. He was a decorated warrior with decades of experience, but he had never faced someone who had been taught that surrender was not an option. On the third morning, Taewan woke before dawn, station time. He went through his routine slowly, methodically. He ate a careful breakfast, foods chosen for sustained energy rather than taste. He checked his gear even though there was little to check. The match would be fought in standard tactical clothing, no weapons, no enhancements. Ambassador Park visited one final time. There's still time to withdraw. No, ma'am. There isn't. She nodded, having expected this answer. Then make us proud, Commander. As she left, Taewan sat down for a final meditation. He cleared his mind of doubt, of fear, of everything except the task ahead. He visualized the arena, the opponent, the fight to come. He did not visualize winning. That was not how SEALs thought. He visualized surviving, adapting, continuing no matter what happened. The comm chimed, indicating it was time to go to the arena. Taewan stood, rolled his shoulders, and walked toward the door. His heart rate was steady. His hands were calm. He had done everything possible to prepare. Now he just had to show the galaxy what humanity was really made of. The arena was vast, a circular space designed to accommodate combat demonstrations from dozens of different species. The floor was covered in a synthetic material that provided traction without being harsh enough to damage sensitive biological features. Shields surrounded the combat zone, protecting the thousands of spectators who filled the seating areas. Representatives from every council species had come to watch. This was more than entertainment. This was political theater, a statement about humanity's place in galactic society. Cameras from hundreds of news networks pointed toward the arena floor, broadcasting to billions of viewers across known space. Taewan entered through the western gate. The walk to the arena floor felt longer than it was, every step measured and deliberate. He wore simple tactical clothing in dark blue, the only decoration being a small flag patch on his shoulder. No armor, no enhancements, just cloth and the man inside it. The crowd noise changed when he appeared. Whispers became louder discussions. Some species had never seen a human in person before. To them, Taewan looked small, fragile even. His species had no natural weapons, no armor, nothing that suggested they could survive in hostile environments. Taewan reached the center of the arena and stopped, standing at ease. He looked up at the viewing boxes where Ambassador Park sat with other human delegates. She gave him a slight nod. In another box, he could see Captain Minji Song watching via holographic transmission from Earth. His team leader's face was carefully neutral, but Taewan knew her well enough to read the concern there. The eastern gate opened with a sound like thunder. Drums began to beat, a rhythmic pattern that resonated through the arena floor. Vorthak appeared and the crowd erupted in cheers. The Krell warrior wore traditional battle dress, which meant very little actual clothing. His natural armor was decoration enough, each plate carved with symbols representing his victories. He carried no weapons, but with forearms that could crush steel, he hardly needed any. He raised all four arms to the crowd, accepting their adulation. Vorthak crossed the arena in long strides, each step heavy enough to feel through the floor. He stopped 10 feet from Taewan, looking down at the human with undisguised contempt. Last chance to withdraw, human. I will not hold back simply because you are weak. I didn't expect you to, Taewan replied calmly. Counselor Thren descended on a floating platform, her feathers showing yellow patterns that indicated official business. This exhibition match is sanctioned under Coalition law, Right of Challenge Provision 7. Combat will continue until one participant is incapacitated or surrenders. Lethal force is prohibited. Medical teams are standing by. She looked at both combatants. Do you understand these terms? I do, Vorthak said. Understood, Taewan confirmed. Thren raised one wing. Then let this challenge begin. The wing dropped and she quickly ascended away from the combat zone. Vorthak did not wait. He launched forward immediately, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Two arms swung in from different angles, coordinated to give Taewan no room to dodge. Taewan dove sideways, rolling across the arena floor. He felt the air pressure from the missed strikes, strong enough to know that either one would have ended the fight immediately. He came up in a crouch, already moving as Vorthak turned to follow. The Krell warrior was fast, faster than the videos had suggested. His forearms created a web of attacks, each one capable of breaking bones. Taewon backpedaled, barely avoiding the strikes, focusing everything on defense. A fist clipped his shoulder. The impact spun Taewon around, pain exploding through his upper body. He stumbled, and Vorthak pressed the advantage. An uppercut caught Taewon in the ribs, lifting him off his feet. He flew backward, hit the ground hard, and slid across the synthetic flooring. The crowd roared. This was what they had expected. Human fragility against Krell's strength. Taewon pushed himself up slowly. His ribs screamed at him, possibly cracked. His shoulder was definitely going to bruise spectacularly. He had been in the fight for less than 30 seconds and was already hurt. Vorthak advanced, confident now. "Stay down, human. Accept defeat before I break you." Taewon stood. His breathing was controlled despite the pain. Not yet. This seemed to amuse Vorthak. Brave. Foolish but brave. He attacked again, a straightforward charge meant to overwhelm through pure power. Taewon waited until the last moment, then dropped and rolled to his left. Vorthak's momentum carried him past, and for a brief moment, the Krell warrior's side was exposed. Taewon struck, driving his fist into the gap between armor plates at Vorthak's ribs. It was like punching stone. Taewon's hand exploded with pain, and Vorthak barely seemed to notice. The warrior turned and swatted Taewon aside almost casually. The blow sent the human tumbling across the arena floor again. This time it took longer to get up. Taewon's vision swam. His right hand felt broken. Blood trickled from his nose where his face had scraped the floor. Every breath hurt. The crowd was quieter now, the initial excitement fading into something like pity. This was not a fight. It was an execution in slow motion. Ambassador Park stood in her viewing box, one hand pressed against the transparent shield. She looked like she wanted to stop this but could not. The challenge had been accepted. It had to play out. Taewon wiped blood from his face and stood again. His legs were shaky, but they held. Vorthak stared at him, confusion replacing contempt. "Why do you continue?" "You cannot win." "Probably not," Taewon agreed. His voice was steady despite everything. "But I can learn." That statement made no sense to Vorthak. There was nothing to learn from losing. Victory taught lessons. Defeat taught nothing except that you were weak. But Taewon was learning. Each exchange gave him more information. Vorthak was strong, but his attacks followed patterns. He favored his upper right arm for power strikes. His lower left arm was slightly slower, probably an old injury. He turned clockwise more often than counterclockwise, suggesting better flexibility in one direction. Small details, tiny advantages, but they were something. The fight continued. Vorthak struck and Taewon dodged or blocked or simply took the hit and kept moving. The Krell warrior was landing solid blows regularly now, any one of which would have stopped most opponents. But Taewon refused to stay down. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The crowd grew restless. This should have been over already. Why did the human continue to rise? Taewon was not thinking about the crowd. He was not thinking about the pain that filled every part of his body. He was thinking about Hell Week, the crucible of SEAL training where they were pushed beyond human limits. Instructors screaming at them to quit. Every muscle burning. Mind fogging from exhaustion. And the simple truth they learned: your body will quit long before it actually breaks. The mind gives up first. Pain is just pain. It cannot stop you unless you let it. Vorthak was breathing harder now. The exertion of his attacks was beginning to show. His movements were still powerful, still dangerous, but they lacked the crisp precision from the fight's beginning. Taewon noticed. He filed the information away, adding it to everything else he had learned. 15 minutes into the fight, Taewon took another massive hit that sent him sprawling. He hit the ground and did not move immediately. The crowd held its breath. Medical teams moved closer to the arena shields, ready to intervene. Then Taewon's hand moved. He pressed against the floor. His body shook with effort, but he pushed himself up. First to his knees, then slowly to his feet. Blood covered his face. His left eye was swelling shut. His movements were stiff, mechanical. But he stood. And for the first time, Vorthak looked uncertain. In the viewing boxes, Elder Counselor Mareth leaned forward. The ancient warrior had fought in 1,000 battles across 300 years. He understood something the others did not yet see. The human is not trying to win, Mareth said quietly to those around him. He is studying, learning, adapting. On the arena floor, Taewon settled into his stance again. His body was broken, but his eyes were clear, focused, calculating. Vorthak saw that focus and felt something he had not experienced in decades of combat. He felt doubt. The human should not be standing, should not be conscious, should not be staring at him with that look of absolute determination. But he was, and that changed everything. 20 minutes into the fight, the atmosphere in the arena had shifted completely. What began as anticipated spectacle had transformed into something the gathered species did not fully understand. The betting markets had frozen, confused by what they were witnessing. Taewon was still standing. More than that, he was moving differently now. His dodges were tighter, wasting less energy. His positioning was better, keeping obstacles between himself and Vorthak when possible. He was not winning, but he was no longer simply surviving. Vorthak's breathing was labored. His forearms swung with the same power, but the coordination was off. The precise patterns from earlier had degraded into simpler, more direct attacks. Sweat glistened on the small patches of skin visible between his armor plates. He charged again, and Taewon did not dodge. Instead, he moved forward inside the reach of those massive arms. The maneuver surprised Vorthak enough that his strikes went wide. Taewon drove his elbow into the gap at Vorthak's knee joint, the one spot Dr. Yuna had identified as vulnerable. The Krell warrior grunted, the first sound of pain he had made. He grabbed Taewon with two arms and threw him across the arena. The human hit the ground rolling, came up and immediately repositioned himself near one of the arena's structural pillars. "You fight like a coward," Vorthak growled, advancing more slowly now, hiding, running. "This is not warrior behavior." Taewon did not respond. Words were wasted energy. He watched Vorthak approach, noting the slight favor the Krell warrior was giving his right leg now. The elbow strike had done something, maybe not much, but something. Vorthak attacked, and Taewon used the pillar, keeping it between them. The Krell's strike hit the pillar instead, and Taewon felt the vibration through the floor. He moved again, maintaining distance, forcing Vorthak to chase him. In the viewing boxes, more observers were starting to understand. Hyunwoo was grinning despite the violence. "He's doing it. He's actually doing it." Ambassador Park looked confused. "Doing what? He's still losing." "No," Hyunwoo said. "He's winning. Just not the way Vorthak understands." Elder Marith was explaining the same thing to the counselors near him. Krell combat philosophy is based on overwhelming force applied quickly. They are sprint hunters, using massive power to end fights before they begin. But humans— He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Humans evolve differently. They are persistence hunters. They do not need to be faster or stronger. They simply need to outlast their prey." One counselor, a crystalline being who communicated through light patterns, flickered a question. "But the Krell warrior is still stronger, still capable of ending this." "Yes," Marith agreed. "But watch how much energy he expends with each attack. Watch how the human conserves his movements now. This is no longer about strength. This is about endurance." On the arena floor, Vorthak was growing frustrated. The human would not stand and fight properly. He kept moving, dodging, using the environment. It was dishonorable. It was infuriating. It was working. Another charge, another near miss as Taewon slipped aside at the last second. Vorthak's momentum carried him into the arena wall. The impact would have killed a human. Vorthak simply shook himself and turned, but the movement was slower than before. Taewon's vision was blurred. His body screamed at him to stop, to lie down, to accept that he had done enough. His ribs were definitely broken. His right hand was useless. His face was a mask of blood and bruises, but his mind was clear. He thought about the ocean, cold and infinite during Hell Week. Instructors had tied their hands and feet and thrown them in, teaching them to swim anyway. Teaching them that limitations were mental constructs that could be overcome. He thought about the desert where they ran until their feet bled, teaching them that pain was temporary, but quitting lasted forever. He thought about every moment of training that had pushed him past what he thought possible, showing him that humans had one advantage in the galaxy. They refused to accept defeat. 25 minutes. Vorthak's attacks were still dangerous, but they were slower, predictable. The Krell warrior was exhausted, his massive body demanding more energy than his biology could efficiently provide during extended combat. Taewon noticed gaps appearing in Vorthak's defense. The lower left arm dropped too much after strikes. The right side was overcompensating for the injured leg. These were small openings, but they were there. He began to counterattack. Nothing fancy, just quick strikes to vulnerable points when opportunities appeared. His broken hand was useless, but his left hand still worked. He targeted joints, gaps in the armor, anywhere that might accumulate damage. Individually, his strikes did almost nothing. Vorthak barely felt them, but they added up, each one requiring the Krell warrior to adjust, to compensate, to expend more energy defending. The crowd was fully engaged now, leaning forward, the earlier pity replaced by fascination. They were watching something unprecedented. A weaker species standing against a stronger one through sheer refusal to surrender. 30 minutes. Vorthak stumbled, just slightly, just for a moment, but he stumbled. His body was shutting down, the biological cost of maintaining his power finally overwhelming his systems. Taewon saw it. He pressed forward, not with overwhelming force, but with steady pressure. Strike, move, strike again, each attack precise, targeting the same vulnerable points repeatedly. Vorthak swung wildly, his coordination failing. Taewon ducked under the attack and drove his left fist into the Krell's knee joint again. This time Vorthak's leg buckled. The warrior caught himself with two arms pushing back to his feet, but the movement was slow. Impossible, Vorthak breathed. You should be unconscious. How do you continue? Taewon finally spoke, his voice rough but steady. Because stopping is not an option. It was a simple statement, but it carried the weight of human history. Humans had survived ice ages, predators, diseases, starvation. They had faced extinction countless times and refused to accept it. They had built civilization from nothing, reached for the stars, and carved their place in a hostile galaxy through sheer determination. Vorthak attacked again, but it was desperation now rather than strategy. His four arms swung in uncoordinated patterns, each strike slower than the last. Taewon moved between them, inside the Krell's reach, and struck the knee joint a third time. This time, Vorthak's leg gave out completely. He dropped to one knee, catching himself with his arms. He tried to rise, but his body would not cooperate. The biological shutdown Dr. Yuna had predicted was happening. The mighty warrior, conqueror of 17 star systems, could not stand. Taewon stepped back, swaying on his feet. He was barely standing himself, held upright by will rather than physical capability. But he was standing, and Vorthak was not. The arena fell absolutely silent. Thousands of beings held their breath, unable to believe what they were seeing. Vorthak looked up at Taewon, confusion and something like respect in his small eyes. How? The word was barely a whisper. Taewon met his gaze. You fight to win quickly. Humans fight like losing is not possible. There's a difference. Vorthak tried once more to rise, his forearms pushed against the ground, muscles straining. For a moment it seemed he might manage it through sheer force of will. Then his arms gave out and he collapsed forward. The sound of his armor hitting the arena floor echoed through the chamber like thunder. Medical teams rushed forward, their scanners confirming what everyone had witnessed. Vorthak was conscious but physically unable to continue. His body had simply run out of energy, the biological cost of his power finally exceeding what he could sustain. Taewon stood over him, barely conscious himself. Blood dripped from his face to puddle on the floor. His body shook with exhaustion, but he stood. And in that moment the galaxy learned what humanity truly meant. The medical teams worked quickly, scanners humming as they assessed both combatants. Vorthak lay on the arena floor, his massive chest heaving as his body struggled to recover from complete exhaustion. His armor had protected him from physical damage, but his internal systems had simply shut down. His biology had reached its limit and forced a shutdown to prevent permanent harm. Taewon swayed on his feet, refusing the medical technicians who tried to stabilize him. He looked down at Vorthak, his expression unreadable behind the blood and swelling. Then he did something that shocked every species watching. He extended his left hand toward the fallen warrior. His right hand hung useless at his side, but his left was open, offering help. Vorthak stared at the hand like it was an alien artifact he could not comprehend. In Krell culture, defeat meant submission. The victor did not help the defeated. They accepted surrender and moved on. This gesture made no sense. Why? Vorthak asked, his voice weak. You won. Why offer aid? Because the fight is over, Taewon said simply. You're not my enemy. You are just my opponent. The distinction meant nothing to Vorthak, but he was too exhausted to argue. He reached up with one of his forearms and took Taewon's hand. The human's grip was firm despite his injuries, and together they managed to get Vorthak to a sitting position before medical teams insisted on taking over. The arena remained silent. Thousands of spectators tried to process what they had witnessed. This was not how combat exhibitions ended. The weaker species did not defeat the stronger through persistence. Power decided outcomes. Strength determined victory. Except apparently when humans were involved. Counselor Thren descended on her floating platform, her feathers showing colors that indicated confusion and respect mixed together. The challenge is concluded. Commander Taewon Kim of Earth is declared victor by incapacitation of his opponent. Her voice carried through the arena speakers. The exhibition is ended. The crowd finally found their voice. Some species erupted in cheers. Others sat in stunned silence. The betting markets crashed as thousands of wagers were settled, most of them wrong. In the viewing boxes, Ambassador Park was surrounded by congratulating delegates from various species. She accepted their words graciously, but her eyes stayed on Taewon as medical teams finally convinced him to sit down and accept treatment. Hyunwoo was already composing his report to Earth, grinning as he typed. Captain Min Ji-song's holographic transmission showed her nodding slowly, pride evident even across the light years separating them. But the most interesting reaction came from the council chambers themselves. Elder Marith requested an emergency session, and within hours, representatives gathered again in the crystal chamber where this had all begun. Marith stood to address them, his ancient frame moving with careful dignity. He had fought in countless battles across 3 centuries. He had seen empires rise and fall, and now he understood something crucial about the galaxy's newest members. "We must discuss what we witnessed today," Marith began, "and more importantly, what it means for the coalition." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Krell contingent sat in angry silence. Their greatest warrior had been defeated by a species they considered weak. "The human did not win through superior strength," Marith continued. "He did not win through better reflexes or natural weapons. He won through something far more dangerous." He paused, letting the words settle. "He won through refusal to surrender." A crystalline counselor flickered a question. "But surely determination alone cannot overcome physical superiority." "Can it not?" Marith challenged. "Consider human evolution. They are persistence hunters. On their world, humans chased prey that was faster and stronger until that prey collapsed from exhaustion. They survived ice ages by simply refusing to die. They built civilization by trying, failing, and trying again until they succeeded." He pulled up holographic displays showing human history, wars fought over decades, explorations that killed hundreds before succeeding, scientific advances that took generations to achieve. A pattern emerged. Humans did not give up. "Every species in this chamber evolved to fill a niche," Marith said. Krell evolved as apex predators using overwhelming force. Avians evolved with flight and superior sensory organs. Aquatic species developed in high-pressure environments. We each have our advantages. He gestured to the displays. Humans evolved with one advantage that trumps all others in the right circumstances. They evolved to never stop. Their biology supports extended activity. Their psychology refuses to accept defeat. Their culture glorifies persistence in the face of impossible odds. Another counselor spoke up. "But this makes them sound like machines, not living beings." "No," Ambassador Park interjected, standing from her seat. "It makes us stubborn." She smiled slightly. "Commander Kim did not win today because he's superhuman. He won because quitting would have been worse than continuing. Every species here has survival instincts. Ours include persistence that borders on insanity." Marith nodded agreement. "This is why humans are dangerous, counselors. Not because they are strong, but because they are relentless. In a fair fight, most species would defeat them. But humans do not fight fair fights. They adapt. They endure. They find ways to turn their weaknesses into advantages." The chamber filled with discussion. Some delegates seemed frightened by this assessment. Others appeared thoughtful. The Krell contingent remained silent, processing the implications. 3 days later, Vorthak requested a meeting with Taiwan. Both warriors were still recovering in the medical facilities. Taiwan's ribs were healing in regeneration therapy. His hand had been rebuilt with cellular accelerators. His face was still bruised but no longer swollen. Vorthak entered the recovery room, moving slowly. His leg was healing, but the damage to his pride would take longer. He stood before Taewon's bed, his forearms hanging at his sides. "I came to understand," Vorthak said without preamble. "Understand what?" "How you defeated me." The Krell warrior sat down carefully in a chair designed for his bulk. "I was stronger, faster, better armored. By all measures, I should have won quickly." "You should have," Taewon agreed, "but you did not fight to win quickly. You fought to not lose. These are different strategies." Taewon nodded. "In SEAL training, they teach us that we don't have to be the best. We just have to be the one still standing when everyone else quits." Vorthak was quiet for a long moment. "My people conquer through strength. We believe power is the only true measure of worth. But you have shown me something I did not know. There are different kinds of strength." "Respect," Taewon said. "That's what you're feeling. It goes both ways, you know. What you did in that arena would have killed most humans in the first minute. You're incredibly strong. But I lost. This time. In a specific circumstance designed to favor endurance over power." Taewon shifted in his bed, wincing slightly. "If we fought again tomorrow, you'd probably win." "I couldn't do that twice in a row. I'm only human." The phrase made Vorthak laugh, a sound like grinding rocks. "Only human. Yes, I begin to understand what that means." They talked for an hour, comparing combat philosophies and training methods. Vorthak was fascinated by SEAL training, by the concept of pushing beyond physical limits through mental discipline. Taewon was equally interested in Krell martial traditions, the honor codes and ritual combat that shaped their culture. When Vorthak finally left, he stopped at the doorway. "I will tell my people a story about humans, about how they do not fight to prove strength but fight as if defeat is impossible. This makes them dangerous in ways we did not anticipate." "Is that a threat?" Taewon asked mildly. "No. It is a warning to never underestimate your species again. And perhaps," Vorthak paused, "perhaps it is the beginning of respect." Weeks later, a formal proposal came before the council. Vorthak himself presented it, his leg fully healed, his bearing proud despite the public defeat he had suffered. "The Krell Empire recognizes humanity as a warrior species," he announced. "We propose a military exchange program. Krell warriors will train with human special forces. Human soldiers will train in Krell combat academies. Both species will benefit from understanding different approaches to warfare." The proposal passed unanimously. Other species quickly added their own exchange programs, eager to learn what made humans so persistent, so dangerous when cornered. Earth received the news with careful celebration. They had been accepted not as equals in strength, but as equals in determination. It was not the path anyone expected, but it was perhaps more valuable. Taewon returned to Earth 3 months later. His team greeted him at the spaceport, Captain Minji at the front. She looked him over carefully, noting the scars that regeneration therapy had not completely erased. "You look like hell," she observed. "You should see the other guy." Taewon replied with a slight grin. "I did. Everyone did. It's been broadcast about 1 billion times." Minji handed him a tablet. "Your after-action report is due, and Command wants to develop new training protocols based on what happened in that arena." Taewon took the tablet, already dreading the paperwork. It wasn't anything special. Just SEAL training applied to a different situation. "That's exactly what makes it special," Minji said. "You showed the galaxy what we really are. Not the strongest species, not the fastest or toughest," she smiled,